Summer, 1942. Europe trembles under the weight of war. The thunder of artillery echoes across the Eastern Front, where Nazi Germany seeks to crush the Soviet Union beneath a storm of steel. Amid the chaos, a new weapon emerges from the factories of Kassel, a machine unlike any the world has seen before. The Panzerkampfwagen 6 Tiger. It is not merely a tank. It is an idea forged in metal, precision, power, and fear. Its armor seems invincible. Its gun, unstoppable. Each one takes months to build, crafted like a masterpiece of engineering perfection. To the German High Command, the Tiger is the embodiment of superiority, the promise that technology can turn back the tide of war. But across the Atlantic, in the bustling heart of American industry, another philosophy takes form. The United States doesn't seek perfection, it seeks momentum. From Detroit's assembly lines roll endless rows of M4 Shermans. Simple, fast, reliable, and built in numbers that defy imagination. Germany would build 1,347 Tigers. America would build 49,234 Shermans. One tank symbolized power. The other symbolized persistence. And in that clash of steel and ideology, the future of the modern world would be decided. October 1941, the Eastern Front burns. German tanks rumble through the vast, frozen plains of the Soviet Union. But the Blitzkrieg, the lightning war that once seemed unstoppable, has begun to slow. The Soviets are adapting, their T-34 tanks proving faster, stronger, deadlier than anything Germany expected. In the bitter cold outside Moscow, Hitler faces a revelation that terrifies him. For the first time, German steel is not enough. And so, in secret factories across the Reich, a new monster begins to take shape. A tank so powerful it would reclaim Germany's dominance through sheer fear alone. The idea for the Tiger tank was born not in triumph, but in desperation. By late 1941, Germany's war machine, once considered invincible, was bleeding in the snow of Russia. The Wehrmacht had advanced thousands of miles in a few months, but its Panzer III and IV tanks, the pride of its early conquests, were no match for the Soviet T-34. The T-34 was a revelation. Sloped armor that deflected shells, a wide-track system that glided through mud and snow, and a powerful 76mm gun that could destroy German tanks before they even reached firing range. To the German soldiers on the front lines, the T-34 was a nightmare, fast, elusive, and deadly. When word of these defeats reached Berlin, Adolf Hitler's fury was unmatched. He saw in the T-34 not just a military challenge, but a direct insult to German engineering superiority. His answer was absolute: create a tank that nothing on earth could destroy. He demanded a weapon that embodied the Third Reich's ideology, the perfection of form and function, the dominance of precision and craftsmanship over mass production. What emerged from that obsession was the Tiger I, designed by Henschel engineers under immense pressure. The Tiger was not built for speed or efficiency. It was built to intimidate. Weighing over 54 tons, with armor up to 100mm thick, it could shrug off almost any Allied shell. Its 88mm KWK-36 gun, derived from the feared anti-aircraft cannon that had already earned a reputation for annihilating tanks, could penetrate enemy armor at over 2 kilometers. To German command, this was the answer to every fear the Eastern Front had unleashed. To Hitler, it was a symbol of German genius, the iron embodiment of his belief in technological supremacy. But there was a cost. Each Tiger required enormous resources, 300,000 man-hours, massive amounts of rare steel, and specialized parts that could only be made by hand. While America's factories ran on assembly line precision, Germany's Tigers were handcrafted masterpieces. They were tanks built like luxury cars, magnificent, but impractical for a world engulfed in total war. Even as the prototypes rolled out in 1942, engineers warned of problems. The Tiger's transmission and suspension struggled under its massive weight. Its fuel consumption was astronomical, burning hundreds of liters per day. Repairs were nearly impossible in combat zones. A single broken gear could immobilize a machine that had taken months to build. But these flaws were ignored. Hitler wanted a symbol. He wanted something that would strike terror into the hearts of his enemies. A tank that could turn the tide by its presence alone. On August 29, 1942, the first Tigers entered combat near Leningrad. Their appearance sent shockwaves through both armies. The ground shook beneath their treads. Soviet shells bounced harmlessly off their thick armor. To those who saw them for the first time, the Tiger seemed otherworldly, unstoppable. But behind that image of power lay a fragile truth. The Tiger was a weapon of fear, not endurance. It was too heavy for most bridges, too complex for mass repair, too expensive to replace. For every Tiger that rolled out of a factory, Germany could have built 10 Panzer IVs. Still, propaganda adored it. German newspapers declared it invincible. Hitler believed it would restore the Reich's destiny. And for a time it did. On the battlefield, a single Tiger could destroy an entire company of Allied tanks if positioned well. Its long-range accuracy was legendary. To Allied crews, even the sound of its engine could trigger panic. The myth of the Tiger had begun, a psychological weapon as much as a physical one. Yet, as the months passed, the truth became clear. While the Tiger dominated duels, it could not dominate the war. Its production was too slow, its maintenance too costly, its design too intricate for the chaos of total conflict. The Tiger was a masterpiece, but masterpieces do not win wars. Meanwhile, across the ocean, a different kind of engineering was unfolding, one built not on perfection, but on purpose. The United States, still fresh in the war, was transforming its industrial might into a force unlike anything the world had ever seen. While Germany crafted 25 tanks a month, America produced hundreds. While German engineers argued over precision tolerances, American mechanics rolled tanks off the line in hours. Two worlds were taking shape, one of artistry and one of efficiency, one of fear and one of endurance. The Tiger was Germany's vision of power. The Sherman would become America's answer, not to outgun it, but to outlast it. The war of ideology was no longer fought only in trenches. It was fought in factories, on blueprints, and in the heartbeat of nations. And, as the smoke of 1942 thickened over Europe, both sides prepared for a collision that would define modern warfare, a clash not just of tanks, but of philosophies. Spring 1943, the roar of the Tiger echoes across Europe. In the villages of Tunisia, the fields of Kursk, and the forests of France, soldiers whisper of a new terror, a tank so unstoppable that even courage feels useless against it. The Tiger has become more than a weapon. It's a legend, a shadow crawling through smoke and fear. Allied shells ricochet like pebbles off its armor. Its 88mm gun cuts through their lines like a scythe. To the men who faced it, the Tiger wasn't just metal. It was a nightmare that breathed fire. By 1943, the Tiger had become the most feared machine in the world. Its arrival on the battlefield was an event whispered through Allied ranks like a warning. Wherever the Tiger went, destruction followed. On the Eastern Front, its first real test came at the Battle of Leningrad and later at Kharkov. Here it dominated the plains, knocking out Soviet tanks at ranges they couldn't even dream of hitting back from. Soviet gunners watched in horror as their shells bounced harmlessly off the Tiger's armor. Commanders began ordering their men to avoid direct confrontation, to outmaneuver rather than outgun. The Germans celebrated these victories as proof that the Tiger was a weapon of destiny. Propaganda posters showed its silhouette against burning horizons, captions reading, "Unstoppable, unbreakable, unmatched." But what made the Tiger truly terrifying wasn't just its firepower, it was the myth surrounding it. Allied soldiers often mistook any large German tank for a Tiger, a psychological phenomenon that spread panic even when the real machine wasn't there. The name Tiger itself became synonymous with death on tracks. For the men who faced it, survival depended on luck, not skill. A British gunner once wrote, "We'd see the muzzle flash and pray. You didn't fight a Tiger. You endured it. The Tiger's 88mm cannon was its soul, a weapon so precise that it could destroy a Sherman from over a mile away. It turned tank battles into duels where the first shot almost always decided the outcome. The sound of that gun, a deep, thunderous crack, became an omen of death. In North Africa, Rommel's Afrika Korps received a handful of Tigers in early 1943. Under the desert sun, their impact was immediate. The Allied tanks, lighter and faster, could do little but swarm and hope to flank them. In the open sands, the Tiger's armor was nearly invincible. But even as it conquered the battlefield, cracks began to show. In the harsh terrain of Tunisia, the Tiger's mechanical flaws became evident. Its transmission failed frequently, tracks snapped, engines overheated. Soldiers began to say, "If you hear a Tiger, it's a threat. If you see one, it's broken down." Each machine required immense maintenance. Hours of repair for every hour of combat. A single broken part could immobilize the entire vehicle, and towing one off the field often required multiple tanks working together. Still, when the Tiger worked, it was unmatched. Its armor shrugged off hits that would have torn any other tank apart. Its thick steel sides bore the scars of hundreds of impacts, proof of its power and a warning to its enemies. The Tiger was not just a machine, it was a psychological weapon. For the Allies, every encounter became a test of nerve. British tankers nicknamed their Shermans Ronsons, like the lighter brand they lit every time. American crews learned to rely on teamwork, speed, and courage to survive encounters that their machines could not win head-on. But beneath the surface of triumph, the German army was beginning to strain under the Tiger's weight, literally and figuratively. Each Tiger consumed 10 times more fuel than a medium tank. Transporting them required modified trains and bridges. Repairs demanded expert mechanics who were in short supply. Germany's industrial base, already under pressure from Allied bombing, simply couldn't sustain production at scale. By mid-1943, barely 1,000 Tigers existed. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the United States had already produced tens of thousands of M4 Shermans. For every Tiger that rumbled into battle, a wave of Shermans was waiting to meet it. The difference wasn't just in numbers, it was in philosophy. The Tiger was designed to dominate through quality. The Sherman was designed to win through adaptability. The Battle of Kursk, fought in July 1943, became the ultimate test. It was the largest tank battle in history, more than 6,000 tanks clashing across the vast Russian steppe. Tigers led the German spearhead, tearing through Soviet defenses, their guns reaping devastation. But the Soviets had learned. They avoided direct duels, laid vast minefields, and attacked the Tiger's weakness, its mobility and logistics. When the smoke cleared, the myth of German invincibility had been wounded. The Tiger's power was real, but it could not offset Germany's declining resources and the sheer industrial might of its enemies. Each Tiger destroyed was a loss felt deeply, a masterpiece gone forever. Each Sherman destroyed was simply replaced by another. Still, the legend endured. Allied intelligence estimated Tiger numbers to be 5 times higher than reality. That's how deeply fear had rooted itself. It wasn't just a machine anymore. It was an icon of terror. For the men who fought inside it, the Tiger was both pride and prison. Its crews spoke of feeling invincible one moment and trapped the next, aware that if the engine failed or a track snapped, they were sitting ducks for artillery or aircraft. And yet, when the Tiger moved, it commanded awe. The rumble of its Maybach engine was unlike anything else, deep, growling, mechanical thunder. In those moments, it felt like Germany could still win. But war does not reward beauty or perfection. It rewards endurance. And across the ocean, a very different kind of machine, simple, reliable, and relentless, was being built by the tens of thousands. The M4 Sherman would never match the Tiger's power, but would outnumber it, outlast it, and ultimately overwhelm it. Because the war was changing, and no matter how mighty the Tiger roared, it could not drown out the sound of 1,000 Shermans rolling from America's factories, an industrial tide that no tank, no army, no empire could stop. Detroit, Michigan, winter 1942. The sound of hammers and engines drowns out the chill of the American dawn. Inside sprawling factories once used for cars, tanks now roll from the assembly lines by the hundreds. This is no ordinary production. It is a nation awakening. While Europe bleeds under the weight of war, America transforms its industry into an arsenal of freedom. The world's greatest manufacturing miracle is underway, and its heartbeat is steel, sweat, and purpose. From every state, workers unite with one mission: to build the tank that will outlast tyranny itself, the M4 Sherman. In 1942, the United States faced a monumental challenge: to fight a war across two oceans against two of the most powerful military machines in history. The American answer was not a single weapon, but an idea: mass production as a weapon of war. The M4 Sherman tank, born from this philosophy, was everything the German Tiger was not. It was simple, standardized, reliable, and fast. It could be repaired in the field, built in any factory, and driven by soldiers with minimal training. Where the Tiger was a masterpiece of precision, the Sherman was a triumph of practicality. And that practicality would win the war. At the heart of this revolution stood Detroit, the arsenal of democracy. Automobile plants, Ford, Chrysler, and General Motors, retooled their production lines overnight. Assembly lines once used to build sedans now poured out tanks, engines, and weapons around the clock. It wasn't just men working those lines. Across the nation, women stepped into the factories, mothers, daughters, and wives, welding steel, riveting armor, testing engines. They weren't just building machines, they were building victory. Each Sherman tank rolled out with a stamped serial number and a soul forged by collective determination. In cities like Chicago, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh, steel mills glowed brighter than ever before. By 1943, a Sherman tank was being completed every 38 minutes. It was the power of American industrial democracy, a system that could mobilize millions and turn blue-collar labor into a strategic weapon. The Sherman's design reflected this philosophy. Its 75mm main gun wasn't the largest, but it was accurate, dependable, and adaptable. The tank was light enough to be transported easily by ship and versatile enough to serve in every theater, from the deserts of North Africa to the jungles of the Pacific. Early versions of the Sherman faced criticism. Its armor could be penetrated by German guns, and it often caught fire when hit, earning nicknames like Tommy Cooker and Ronson. But what the critics missed was the Sherman's true power. It could be repaired, replaced, and upgraded faster than any tank in history. While Germany celebrated the perfection of 1,347 Tigers, America simply built 49,234 Shermans. If a Sherman was destroyed, another took its place within days. If a crew was lost, 10 more were trained to replace them. This was not carelessness, it was strategy. The United States understood something that Germany did not. Wars are won by those who can sustain them. General George S. Patton, who commanded Shermans in North Africa and Europe, once said, "Wars may be fought with weapons, but they are won by men. It is the spirit of the men who follow and of the man who leads that gains the victory." The Sherman, he believed, embodied that spirit, dependable, mobile, always ready to move forward. Each tank crew developed an intimate bond with their machine. Inside the cramped steel shell, 5 men lived, fought, and survived together. The driver, gunner, loader, radio operator, and commander, each role vital, each heartbeat synchronized with the engine's rumble. The tank's Continental R975 engine, originally designed for aircraft, gave the Sherman a speed and agility that stunned German commanders. It could maneuver across mud, snow, and city rubble, the kind of mobility the heavy Tigers could only dream of. But the true genius of the Sherman lay in its standardization. Every part, from the treads to the bolts, was interchangeable across factories. If a Sherman was damaged in Normandy, spare parts from a tank built in Detroit or California could repair it. That level of standardization was unheard of in Germany, where even two Tigers from the same batch might require custom fittings. The result was an unstoppable logistics chain, an army of machines fed by an even larger army of workers and engineers. By mid-1944, American industry was producing not just tanks, but the ecosystem to support them. Fuel trucks, repair depots, spare engines, and ammunition plants. Training schools that turned civilians into expert crews. Convoys crossing the Atlantic to keep the front supplied without pause. The United States didn't just build tanks, it built a system of war, one that no enemy could match. In the North African Campaign, the first Shermans entered combat alongside British forces at El Alamein. Their speed and reliability allowed the Allies to push the Afrika Korps back across the desert. The Tiger might have been stronger one-on-one, but the Shermans came 10-1, and that ratio would only grow. As the war expanded to Europe, the Sherman became the face of liberation. When the Allies landed in Sicily, then Italy, and finally at Normandy, it was the Sherman that rolled off the landing craft first, leading the charge through hedgerows, towns, and across enemy lines. The D-Day invasion, June 6, 1944, marked the moment the world saw what mass production could achieve. Behind every Sherman was 1,000 workers, 1,000 decisions, and a nation united by purpose. While the German Tiger roared in singular perfection, the Sherman hummed in collective harmony. Each tank told the story of a factory worker's hands, a nation's sacrifice, and a belief that freedom could be built, piece by piece, bolt by bolt. The Tiger might win duels, but the Sherman would win the war. Because America had turned its greatest strength, industrial creativity, into its most powerful weapon. And as 1944 dawned, the tide of war began to turn. Not because of one tank or one gun, but because of millions of people working toward one purpose, to ensure that tyranny would never outproduce freedom. June 6, 1944, Normandy, France. The dawn breaks red over the English Channel as thousands of ships carve through the waves toward the French coast. Above them, aircraft roar. Below them, the sea churns with men, steel, and hope. On the beaches, the fate of Europe is about to be decided. Behind the first waves of infantry, the rumble begins, the sound of Shermans rolling from landing craft, their treads biting into the sand. Somewhere inland, German Tigers lie in wait, engines humming like predators. The greatest armored confrontation in history is about to begin. Quality versus quantity, fear versus persistence. The Battle of Normandy was not just a fight for territory. It was a collision of philosophies. On one side stood Hitler's vision of engineered perfection, the Tiger, massive and immovable, a fortress on treads. On the other stood Roosevelt's vision of democratic might, the Sherman, built by the thousands, mobile, adaptable, and unrelenting. When the Allies landed on D-Day, the Shermans were among the first armored vehicles to set foot on continental Europe. As soon as they cleared the beaches, they faced a deadly maze, hedgerows, minefields, and narrow roads where Tigers lurked like ghosts. The Germans knew every inch of the terrain. They had positioned their heavy tanks in ambush points, waiting for the Allied advance. When a Tiger fired, the result was devastating. Shermans erupted in flames, their crews scrambling for survival. The first encounters were brutal. Allied crews quickly learned that a Sherman could not duel a Tiger head-on. Its 75mm gun simply couldn't penetrate the Tiger's thick armor. At best, they could aim for its treads or rear, but to do that, they had to get dangerously close. In one battle near Villers-Bocage, German ace Michael Wittmann, commanding a single Tiger, destroyed over a dozen Allied tanks in minutes. His attack became legend, proof that one Tiger in the right place could hold back an entire advance. But the Allies adapted. They learned to swarm. For every Tiger that rolled out, there were 5, 10, sometimes 15 Shermans waiting. The strategy was simple: mobility over might. One Sherman would draw fire while others maneuvered for a flank. They didn't need to outgun the Tiger, only to outnumber and outthink it. The Allies also brought an innovation. engineers developed the Sherman Firefly, equipped with a powerful British 17-pounder gun that could finally pierce a Tiger's armor. Crews painted the Firefly's barrel to look like a regular Sherman, hiding their threat until it was too late. In the bocage, the dense, tangled countryside of Normandy, Shermans learned to move like hunters. They fitted hedgerow cutters to their fronts, slicing through obstacles and surprising German ambushes. The Tiger, heavy and slow, struggled to move at all. Its tracks sank into soft soil, its engine overheated. Each movement risked mechanical failure. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. The Tiger was a masterpiece, but a fragile one. The Sherman was simple, but unstoppable. As the weeks passed, the Allies advanced relentlessly. German commanders began to realize that even when their Tigers won a battle, they were losing the war of attrition. Every Tiger lost was irreplaceable. Every Sherman destroyed was replaced within days. By late July 1944, the Allies launched Operation Cobra, breaking through the German lines. Thousands of Shermans surged forward, pouring through the gap and flooding into the French countryside. The German front, once anchored by the might of its tanks, began to crumble. American air superiority sealed the Tiger's fate. P-47 Thunderbolts and Typhoon fighter bombers scoured the skies, hunting anything with treads. A Tiger's thick armor was no match for rockets raining from above. Many were destroyed not by enemy tanks, but by the skies that Germany could no longer control. For the German crews, each day felt like a battle against inevitability. They fought with courage and skill, but they were surrounded by a machine far greater than any tank, the Allied war machine. Fuel shortages, spare part scarcity, and constant air raids turned the once mighty Tiger into a stranded relic. The Allies pressed on. Villages were liberated one by one. Crowds cheered as columns of Shermans rolled through the streets, symbols not just of military power, but of deliverance. A British commander wrote in his diary, "The Tiger may frighten us, but the Sherman carries us forward. That, in the end, is what wins wars." By August 1944, the once feared German armor was in retreat. The Allies had captured or destroyed much of the Tiger force in France. Even those that survived often had to be abandoned. Their engines burned out, their fuel tanks empty, their crews exhausted. As the Allies advanced toward Paris, the myth of the Tiger began to fade. Its name still inspired awe, but its presence was dwindling. Each lost Tiger left a void that Germany could not fill. The Sherman, meanwhile, rolled forward, battered but unbroken. It had become more than a tank. It was a symbol of resilience, proof that adaptability and teamwork could triumph over fear and perfectionism. Every time a Sherman crew climbed into their vehicle, they knew the odds. They weren't fighting with the best tank, but they were fighting with each other, and they knew there were thousands more behind them. That belief, that no man fought alone, was the true armor of the Allied soldier. As the German lines collapsed and the Allies surged toward the Rhine, the age of the Tiger was ending. Its roar, once mighty, was being drowned out by the steady, unending march of progress, the hum of thousands of Shermans and the will of millions who refused to yield. The clash of titans had ended not with a single victory, but with a revelation. In war, it is not always the strongest that survives. It is the one that can endure, adapt, and persist. And on that summer of 1944, as the Shermans rolled through liberated France, the world saw that endurance could be stronger than fear. January 1945, the Reich is collapsing. Snow covers the ruined cities of Europe, and from the east and west, two unstoppable forces close in. The once proud Wehrmacht now fights a retreating war, their fuel nearly gone, their skies lost, their faith fading. Yet among the ruins, one final monster rolls from the factories, the Tiger II, the King Tiger. Larger, stronger, more fearsome than ever. To Hitler, it is the last hope of victory. To its crews, it is a steel coffin. For in this final chapter, the war will not be won by power, but by survival. By 1945, the Third Reich was on its knees. The Tiger tank, once a symbol of dominance, was now a symbol of desperation. Factories lay in ruins from Allied bombings. Fuel supplies were dwindling, and the once mighty German war machine was bleeding from every front. Yet, even in this chaos, Hitler demanded more. He ordered the creation of an even greater weapon, the Tiger II, or Königstiger, King Tiger. This new machine was the Tiger's final evolution. 70 tons of steel, 4-inch armor plates, and an 88mm kitted UK-43 gun capable of destroying any Allied tank before they could even see it. It was by design an apex predator. But it came too late, and at too high a cost. Each Tiger II took more than 300,000 man-hours to build. It required scarce materials Germany could no longer afford: tungsten, chromium, high-grade steel. The factory struggled to meet even minimal quotas. And when the King Tigers finally rolled out, they faced a cruel irony. They had no fuel to move. Many were destroyed, not in battle, but by their own crews, abandoned and blown up to prevent capture. On the frozen roads of the Ardennes, during the Battle of the Bulge, King Tigers broke down one after another. Their massive engines seized in the cold, their transmissions cracked under strain. What had been intended as an unstoppable offensive turned into a desperate retreat. The Sherman, by contrast, had evolved as well. By late 1944 and early 1945, Allied tanks like the Sherman Firefly, M36 Jackson, and EZ-8 had improved guns and suspensions. They couldn't always beat a Tiger in a duel, but they didn't have to. The Allies had something the Germans could no longer match: logistics, air power, and numbers. While Germany could barely produce a few dozen tanks per month, America's assembly lines still thundered day and night. For every Tiger that appeared on the front, there were 50 Shermans waiting across the fields, flanking from every direction, supported by artillery and aircraft. The once invincible Tiger had become a target, and the hunter had become the hunted. On the Eastern Front, the Soviets' T-34s and IS-2s swarmed in overwhelming numbers. In Berlin's outskirts, King Tigers tried to hold ground against entire Soviet armies. Some scored impressive kills, but it no longer mattered. Their destruction was inevitable. Inside the tanks, the German crews fought with grim determination. They were young, many barely 18 or 19 years old, clinging to the myth of invincibility their fathers had once believed. They knew the war was lost, yet they fought on, trapped between loyalty and survival. A German tank commander later recalled, "The Tiger made us feel like gods. The Tiger II made us realize we were mortal." By April 1945, Berlin was burning. The last Tiger tanks fought among the ruins, surrounded by Soviet artillery and swarms of infantry. They fired until they ran out of shells, then until their engines died. When the end came, they were monuments, hulking skeletons of steel amid the rubble of a fallen empire. Meanwhile, the Sherman continued to move forward. Through France, through Belgium, through Germany itself. Its crews liberated towns, crossed rivers, and carried the Allied flag deeper into the heart of Europe. For the men inside, it was never about glory. They knew their tanks weren't perfect. They knew what a Tiger could do to them. But they also knew something the Germans had forgotten. War is not about invincibility. It's about perseverance. In the end, that perseverance crushed the myth of the Tiger. When Germany surrendered on May 8, 1945, only a handful of Tigers remained. The Allies examined them, marveling at their engineering, but also at their flaws. They were magnificent machines, but they belonged to another era, one where craftsmanship mattered more than scalability and pride mattered more than practicality. The Sherman, on the other hand, was already shaping the future. It had proven that mass production, teamwork, and adaptability were the true weapons of modern warfare. Across Europe, children watched the columns of Shermans rolling through their towns, not as invaders, but as liberators. Soldiers waved from their hatches, their tanks marked not by swastikas, but by stars, symbols of hope. In the ashes of Germany's defeat, one truth stood clear. The Tiger had roared for fear. The Sherman rolled for freedom. The end of the Tiger was not just the end of a tank. It was the end of an idea. The belief that perfection wins wars had died amid the ruins of Berlin. In its place rose a new lesson, that the strength of many will always overcome the power of one. As the smoke cleared and peace slowly returned to Europe, the tigers lay silent, their guns pointed toward nothing. But their story would live on, as both a marvel of engineering and a warning against arrogance. Because in the end, war remembers not who built the finest machine, but who built the future. May 1945, silence falls over Europe. The guns have stopped. The tanks rest where they died, in forests, in fields, in shattered cities. The smoke clears to reveal a world forever changed. The mighty tiger, once feared by all, now lies broken among the ruins of the empire it served. The Sherman, humble yet enduring, stands amid the flags of liberation. The war is over, but its echoes will last for generations. And from those echoes emerges a lesson carved in steel, that courage, unity, and resilience, not perfection, are what truly shape the destiny of nations. The war was over, but the story of these two machines, the Tiger and the Sherman, had only just begun. The Tiger lay in twisted wrecks across Europe, its once glorious silhouette rusting in silence. Engineers and historians would study it for decades, awed by its design, its precision, its raw power. It was a marvel of craftsmanship, but it had become a relic of a lost philosophy. The Sherman, meanwhile, rolled home in victory parades. Its crews returned not as conquerors, but as liberators. They had crossed continents, defied fear, and carried the hopes of free nations on their shoulders. In the quiet years that followed, these two machines became symbols of something far greater than steel and fire. They represented two visions of the world, one built on domination, the other on cooperation. The Tiger was the embodiment of obsession, the belief that strength comes from superiority. The Sherman was the embodiment of unity, the belief that strength comes from people working together toward a common goal. And history has shown which vision endures. The Tiger was a masterpiece that could not be sustained. It demanded perfection in an imperfect world. It required time, materials, and manpower that a dying Reich no longer possessed. Every Tiger built was a triumph of engineering and a failure of strategy. The Sherman, on the other hand, was never meant to be perfect. It was meant to be possible. It was the machine of a democracy, designed to be built by thousands, operated by millions, and repaired by anyone. It was a machine of freedom's practicality. Even after the war, the Sherman continued to serve around the world, in Korea, in the Middle East, and in dozens of smaller conflicts. It lived on, not as a relic, but as a reminder that simplicity and reliability often outlast brilliance. The Tiger's legacy became myth. The Sherman's legacy became movement. But beyond the metal, beyond the rivets and engines, there was something deeper, the human story. Inside every Tiger sat a crew of 5 young men, fighting for a regime that promised glory but delivered ruin. They were engineers, farmers, sons, many never understanding the full truth of what they fought for. They battled bravely, but their courage was trapped within the machinery of tyranny. Inside every Sherman sat another crew of 5, mechanics, students, workers, men from small towns and big cities, fighting for something larger than themselves. They faced terror, loss, and overwhelming odds, yet kept moving forward because they believed in something worth the cost. Their courage did not come from their tank. It came from their conviction. And that is the legacy that endures. When we look back at those steel giants today, we're not just studying weapons. We are studying the human condition, our capacity to innovate, to adapt, to endure, and to rise from the ashes of destruction with renewed purpose. The Tiger teaches us about the danger of pride, how brilliance without humility can collapse under its own weight. The Sherman teaches us about the power of unity, how ordinary people, working together, can achieve the extraordinary. In the museums where these tanks now stand, side by side, there's silence. Children climb on their hulls. Veterans stand beside them in reflection. The steel that once divided the world now connects generations. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear their message. Not of war, but of warning. Perfection fades. Power fails. But perseverance endures. The story of the Tiger and the Sherman is not just a story of tanks. It is the story of humanity's eternal struggle between ambition and purpose, between domination and freedom. In every age, in every conflict, that choice remains. So when we remember the war, the battles, the bravery, the fire, let us also remember the lesson forged in those dark years. That greatness is not measured by what we build, but by why we build it. That the true weapon of victory is not the machine, but the spirit that drives it. History does not repeat itself, but it often whispers. The roar of the Tiger and the rumble of the Sherman remind us that the future depends not on might, but on meaning. In our time, as in theirs, we face challenges that test our unity, our courage, and our will to endure. Let us remember the workers who built, the soldiers who fought, and the people who dreamed of peace. Let us carry forward their lesson, that together, with purpose and perseverance, even the impossible can be overcome. Because the strength of humanity is not in its weapons, it's in its heart. So when the engines of history roar again, ask yourself, will you stand for domination or for freedom?